I know that none of you knew that I was preaching today, so you're not accountable. But I know a preacher who preached on this subject every year, but I disguised the title and I changed things around, but this is a preachable sermon before the snow flies. In this particular picture that's in Kotzebue, sometime in November, not last year, but a number of years ago, and this one of my airplanes had to sit out, and it was 70 to 80 miles an hour, almost zero visibility. So there's things that you want to do in the Alaska summer that have to be done before snow flies. Every summer in Alaska that I've been around for close to 50 years, the summer has been short and intense. And it seems that most of us have goals that we set out to do every summer. I'm going to do this and this and this. And I found out that the older I get, it seems like a smaller portion of what I intend to do, I actually get done. And I'm going to show just a few quick slides of a project that really needed to be done before winter. And I questioned whether it was going to get done, although I was praying that I would be able to. It started out with digging a large hole in the ground, about 4 feet deep. Now, it doesn't make a lot of sense generally to think you're going to dig a big hole in the ground and then fill it back in again. That seems like make work from academy days or something. But because the ground where we are at isn't such that it will support a building very good, I had to bring gravel back in and level it. And in spite of the equipment that is available, there's a lot of handwork that has to be done. And everything about building in Alaska is about dealing with the time after the snow flies. When you pour a slab in, it has the heating system for the building in it. And fortunately, there's equipment available to us now that was not available many years ago. And to think of putting concrete in place without a pumper truck is inconceivable. Upwards of 95% of this kind of a project is done prior to the pouring of the concrete. The pouring of the concrete is like the frosting on the cake. It doesn't taste anything like frosting, but you can spend weeks getting ready, and in 3.5 to 4 hours you poured the concrete. And I've been blessed amazingly by friends who had their own deadlines and their own things to do, but they took time to come and help me. Now, people tell me, in fact, my children tell me that they say, "When are you going to start acting your age, Dad?" Well, I don't know when, but not yet. A person who has 2 or 3 good friends is very blessed. You know, there are some people in this world who have no friends and have no good friends. I've been blessed. I have a lot of friends in Alaska. About a month ago, we took a kind of a vacation and spent time with our children. Our children are starting to say, "Dad, when are you going to start thinking about living in a warmer place," and so forth and so on. Well, I don't have the answer to that, but you know, the Apostle Paul was a man who was, shall we say, aggressive for the Lord. And at the particular time that we look in on the Apostle Paul, he's in prison in Rome. He spends his time writing letters to the churches, and the letters are being spread around the world. We can get the idea that Paul is a strong person that needs nobody. But there are a few indications that Paul was also susceptible to loneliness. He seemed indefatigable, powerhouse of faith and courage. Our scripture reading gives a little indication. He writes to Timothy, "Be diligent to come to me quickly, for Demas has forsaken me, having loved this present world, and has departed for Thessalonica. Crescens for Galatia, Titus for Dalmatia. Only Luke is with me." And of course, the best friend to have is Jesus. None other than Jesus. He's available to be the close, dear friend of every one of us. But Paul's friend, other than Jesus, was Luke and his friend Timothy, who was like the son that Paul never had. Paul met him when he visited in Derbe and Lystra. It may have been Timothy who, after Paul had been beaten and flogged and thrown out of the city in the garbage, he searched among the rubbish and found the apostle near death, carried him to his home, where his mother Eunice and his grandmother Lois ministered. Timothy had traveled with the apostle on the road, on the ship, everywhere. He had been through many experiences, good and bad. You know, if you go through a difficult time with a friend, it creates a strong bond. There's nothing compared to a friendship that is forged in adversity and in suffering. I can remember experiences of riding a snow machine through the Brooks Range in April when it was 30 below and a horrendous wind blowing, and camping out in a mountain pass, laying on caribou skins. It was a sleepless night, I have to say. And it was not one that I would like to do again. But the person that I did that trip with, we've always had a bond. I can go a year, 6 months, whatever, and get in touch with him, and it's just like no time went by. Paul writes to Timothy, his dear friend. He says, "Be diligent to come to me quickly. Bring the cloak I left with Carpus at Troas when you come, and the parchments." And for the third time in this passage, he says, "Do your utmost to come before winter." The Bible record does not tell us how Timothy responded to Paul's letter. We don't know what he did. We can only imagine Timothy's response when he received that missile. Timothy was then the elder overseer of a church district. He may have had church business to do, ordaining some elders, setting apart some deacons. He may have been busy. But in those days, ships quit sailing in November and didn't take up sailing again till March. Why? To go on the open sea in the winter was signing your death penalty. One of the times when Paul was shipwrecked is valuable insight on what it's like to sail in the winter. So we'd like to think that Timothy hurried right away and that he went down to the seacoast and he took a ship. Or he traveled across the land to the western shores of Asia Minor. And he took a ship to Brundusium on the heel of Italy. Walked the Appian Way up to Rome. Here's what you can see of the Appian Way today. That he found Paul in his prison. He did for Paul what he needed done. Maybe wrote some letters, contacted people. And that in the early spring, traveled with Paul to the execution place, which was near the pyramid of Cesus. Said his goodbyes, and Paul went to his grave to await the coming Redeemer. But we don't know. Come before winter or never. Some things must be done before winter. If they are not done before winter, they will never be done. Winter will come and winter will pass. Spring will reveal the graves of the opportunities that one went unattended, unfulfilled. Winter, spring, summer, and fall. Had to put a Alaska slide in there. Here's the fall, the fallen leaves, the naked trees are a symbol of all that fades, of the preciousness of present opportunity. Paul writes, come before winter. In this message, there is a voice which calls for reformation. You can build a bonfire anytime, but the fine fire of the Holy Spirit is another thing. He may not speak to your life just anytime. He has his moments. Just like the making of steel requires the molten metal to be hot and fluid, or it won't flow into the mold. It has to be poured at the right moment. There are favorable seasons for change, and heaven declares the time is now. As it says in the book of Revelation, Jesus stands at the door and knocks. If any man hear my voice and opens the door, I will come into him, and we will eat together. Master of human destinies am I. Fame, love, and fortune on my footsteps wait. Cities and fields I walk, I penetrate deserts and fields remote. And passing by, I knock at every door and every gate. Hovel and mart and palace soon or late. If sleeping, wake. If feasting, rise before I turn away. It is the hour of fate, and they who follow me reach every state. Mortals desire and conquer every foe save death. But those who doubt or hesitate, condemned to failure, penury, or woe, seek me in vain and uselessly implore. I answer not, I return no more. John Ingalls. So in this message, there's a voice which calls for reformation. There's a voice that calls for friendship and affection. Paul said, come before winter. We'd like to think that when Timothy got the letter that he took action immediately. Well, what if he didn't? What if he was too busy, too consumed with church work? He went down to the coast to get a ship, and they told him no ships until spring. So in the spring, Timothy got a ship. He made the trip to Rome. He got to the Mamertine prison looking for the Apostle Paul. And he said, oh, the Apostle Paul. Yeah, he used to be in that cell. But he saw the headsman's axe in April, or just a few weeks ago. I'm sorry you missed him. So we don't know how Timothy responded to the letter. But here's the message. Cherish what is dearest while you have it near you, and wait not till it is far away. Blind and deaf though we are, O think if thou yet love anybody living. Wait not till death sweep down the paltry little dust clouds and dissonances of the moment, and all be at last so mournfully clear and beautiful when it is too late. Just like the disciples, as we discussed in Sabbath school, when Jesus went with them to the Garden of Gethsemane. All those disciples, with the exception of Judas, made remarkable contributions to the spreading of the gospel. Well, what did they miss because they slept when Jesus needed support and friendship? They missed it. Whatever it was, they missed it. So we see in the message a voice which calls for reformation, a voice of friendship and affection, the voice of Christ calling us to be His own forever. And when Jesus calls us, He's talking about today, not tomorrow or the next day. Today, if you will hear His voice, harden not your hearts. Behold, now is the accepted time. Now is the day of salvation. Tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Come before winter, come to thy God in time. Youth, manhood, old age past, come to thy God at last. Well, folks, that's the sermon. Today is the day that Jesus is inviting us once again and forever to be part of his kingdom. I pray that we will respond as we ought.